Hey, this is Mike Byrnes with another episode of Business Bests. I'm here to help you be more successful. Hopefully this advice has been helpful for you. Today is one of my favorite topics. When I consult people, I try not to force my advice on anybody, but the one thing that I'm pretty pushy about is to have a great website. In today's day and age, you can really make a great virtual first impression. And a lot of times people will make a purchase decision before they ever encounter you, right? Before they ever walk in your office, before they ever email you, before they ever pick up the phone. They'll know if they want to work with you. So your website is becoming more and more and more important. So one of the things that I'll do with my clients, or even prospective clients sometimes, is just do a whole website review. And so I'm going to kind of take you through my thought process on this episode, let you know what you could think about from your website. This is going to be generic stuff. I'll maybe share some learnings I've had over the years, but reality is a lot of this should apply. So I'm going to kind of go through a whole big long checklist. As we go through that punch list, maybe you'll find some way to make your website better. That's the hope. So right out of the gate, one of the things that you want to consider is your logo. We see a lot of different logos, good and bad. Obviously, you want to have it be very crystal clear. You know, it's got to have a good resolution to it. It can't be super, super chunky and take up a ton of memory online too, because that could slow down your whole website, right? So there's a happy medium. One of the things we'll see in branding is people have a website that is maybe too long and skinny or too tall. Sometimes it's a box or a square, and that works for a lot of different things. Obviously works really well with social media and different things like that, but maybe it won't work for your website. So something to think about, can your logo have multiple formats? The Nike swoosh is probably one of the icons that's most well known in the world. Obviously, they can play around with it, right? They can use the word Nike and they can have the swoosh underneath it if they want it to be a square. They could make it a longer. Longer really works well with a letterhead type of situation, that thin, longer format. And that can work on a laptop if it is something that you're looking at on a larger computer, a larger screen. When you start to think about how people are now digesting information, a lot of times it's on their smartphone, right? So now they're looking at something that needs to be a little bit narrower. And so a box or square would work well, and that's something you need to consider, right? As I go through this, I will definitely hammer home that, depending on the users that you have or the visitors for your website, I'll hammer home that a lot of this has to be smartphone first, right? Like you have to think of that responsive design, meaning it looks really good on your website responds to any different device that people are looking at. It looks good on all of them. All right, so the logo is really important. Whether that branding matters throughout the whole website, colors, different fonts, all that kind of stuff, doesn't always have to match, but something that you want to think about. The next thing is the tagline. So to me, a tagline is something that isn't permanent. You can change it, but it's something you don't want to change all the time, right? So a tagline can help get your message across. We've talked a lot about mission statements. It might be just like a mini version of your mission statement. We could do a whole thing on branding on a separate recording, but the reality is your tagline can get a message across, whether it's literal or figurative. So for example, "Just Do It" was Nike's. That is not literal. It's not saying buy our shoes. It's not saying we have the best attire. Whatever it is, it's just kind of a theme around sports and being people that are active, and that's why "Just Do It" actually became pretty successful over the years when that was the tagline. So start to think about what that tagline might be. There's all kinds of things that you want to think about with your logo and your tagline too. A registered trademark is something that you want to think about. Is it, one, do you have it? And two, how would that be used one time, multiple times throughout your site? And then that is something that you're going to want to actually have in your logo because it can really give you credibility. I've seen companies pop up and try to steal other companies' names because they just didn't protect it. I'm not the compliance expert or legal expert, so talk with that type of professional to get the help that you need. But protect it. If it's something that you're going to invest a lot into your company, that's something worth protecting. The next most important thing from your website, and maybe it's not the most important, but I'm just kind of thinking as the site, as you kind of go down, is the navigation. And you see a lot of companies make a lot of mistakes here. One of the things is that they put too many choices across the top. What that menu is, if it gets overwhelming, there's a lot of usability kind of things too. Like if you have too many choices, the brain goes in overload or it just takes us too long to read, and that will not be a good experience. The other thing is maybe it's too simplified, but then they create like this tree in the navigation. So if you click on About Us, then they have like 50 things that are also website pages underneath that. I would be cautious of finding the right balance. When it comes to usability, you can always ask people that go into your website and get their opinions, whether they're actually active clients, your staff that know everything, so they can give a strong opinion, but they might not be the best people to ask because they're a little too close to the information or your website. Prospects, hey, what did you click on? What was the experience? What did you see? What did you not see? There's a whole bunch of things that people just don't click on every page, right? So why is that not being shown? In the information in our clients, in financial advisors that I work with a lot, usually the About Us page or the bio pages are in the top 3. And so that's a really important thing to make sure that that pops in the menu. One of the things that I'll see too a lot is blog. Like everyone kind of thinks of blogs as somebody ranting and raving. So come up with some other creative word for that. Whatever your fresh content is, whether it's resources or something, thought leadership, or maybe you come up with some catchy name for your routine show, like Business Bests, the name of this program, right? So like maybe there's some way to create something there in the navigation. But those kind of About Us and the story and the bios is usually one that you want to have. Maybe there is something related to that fresh content. We'll talk about the importance of that in a minute. You can really divide things up a couple ways. For the menu options, do you want to just list your services? Like here's what we provide. Or do you want to cater to the audience? Like this is who we help. You can sometimes get away with both approaches, but usually you want to pick one or the other. So like here's, for financial advisors, here's what we do. We do investment management, that's an option. Financial planning, complicated wealth management issues, estate planning, whatever it might be. And those could be the options in the menu. Or you, in that case, for a financial advisor, you might want to have, we help widows, we help corporate executives, we help small businesses, right? Like, and put those 3 different people, different categories of target markets there. I would say there's no wrong or right. It really is up to your target audience, what message you're trying to get across. One thing I will say is the Contact Us page or contact page should obviously be there. It should be really easy for people to see. Sometimes in the real estate space above the website, in the upper right above the menu, you want to always have your contact information, easy ways to be found, easy ways to click on things. Another one that you really want to have is search functionality. Sometimes people will show it as kind of that magnifying glass little icon. Other times it'll say search, and then when people click into that little fields, then your words would go over the word search. I think search is super important because we are in a world where we just ADD, right? Like it's a trend you don't have to like, but we have short attention spans. We're kind of this now generation where we want everything immediately. So if for some reason your website's failing and they can't find what they want, make it very easy that they go in and use search functionality. It is really powerful if they can find what they want very quickly. I would caution you if you have the search functionality and it's kind of like what I would say dog water, like, that's my kid's term actually, like just doesn't work, like it's no good. you got to improve it. That's something to invest the resources in the right plugin or whatever type of functionality you're going to use for your website. Search functionality is incredibly important. One last thing before we get away from the top of the website. This is where you might want to figure out what that tree is, like what are the roots underneath each one of those categories in the menu, and actually how to figure out what that looks like and how that should be shaped. There's some usability approaches that you can do. You can take all the content from your website, put them on stickies, and then have people organize them on a big whiteboard, or if they're stickies, it can be on a wall. And then just have a couple people go through this scenario, let them figure out how things should be organized and what those categories should be. Take a picture of it, then have the next, start over again. Have other people put things up on the wall and organize them and how they all should be organized. And you kind of start to see from that exercise what the mentality is of how they would design your website or what their thought process is. Maybe even have them do just a little bit of an explanation of why they put things certain ways, so you can kind of get behind the visitor's thought process, even though you don't know the visitor, right? So if you do that exercise enough, you'll see some commonalities, and you might see some one-offs that are like, oh, I never even thought of that. So that is incredibly important. The other thing I'll see sometimes in the menu is too many words in that one little section. So you can do a little bit of wordsmithing, even use AI or just a creative journalist or English major or someone that's a marketing expert, how to get those words down so the same message comes across. Obviously, you don't want to have it be too simplified that people don't understand it, but the simpler those choices are at the top, I think the more they're likely to get clicked on. We'll talk about different coloring and fonts and stuff in a little bit, but make sure that those menus at the top are super, super easy to read. Lastly, on the menus is when you do click on things, do you have to hover over something for it to be seen, or do you have to click on something? There's two different types of functionality there. Remember the smartphone experience. That's the one that you have to be really careful about. And how they will click on things, how they will see things. Hovering with a mouse is easier, right? With your finger on a phone, it's a little bit different. So assume people will have to click on things. Make sure that those things are going to be seen too. Like, if you overpopulate something, then obviously it's going to be overwhelming. But if the opposite is if you don't show anything, how is it ever going to be clicked on, right? If they don't know about it. We're only going to take a certain amount of actions before we just don't click any farther or don't look any farther. So make sure you're trying to bubble things up to the top the best that you can. Two other things you might want in that upper corner, maybe your contact information. I think I said that, and I said search functionality. Those are two things you might want to put up there in that upper right corner. But you also might want to have different things like your social icons. Some people have them at the very bottom too, and we'll talk about what you can do in the pages. But the reality is, if you want those things to get views, to get clicks, to get engagement, and you want to have this kind of whole ecosystem around your website, those social icons can be important. I do see companies that have a YouTube icon, for example, and they go there and it's an awful experience. So if you are going to put the icon up there, make sure that it actually is going to support your brand and help it and reinforce it, as opposed to something where they go and it's just a bad experience. So don't just have your web designer throw up every icon and knowing, like, Pinterest, for example, and knowing that your audience might click on it, and then when they get there, it's going to be an awful experience. So be careful with that. For some, client login makes sense up there. People just kind of get trained to look for, they want to have something that they're only going to see, and it's their information. Most people are kind of trained to have that above the menu. It can be in the menu too, just going to take up some of the real estate and the number of choices you can have. But that's something that's important to have at the top. Now, looking at the mobile experience, let's just say you have 5 things across. You got your social icons, you got your search functionality, maybe you got your contact information, you got your logo, you got your tagline. Now that real estate on the little small narrow phone has actually now started to push the real content pretty far down, right? So that's where you have to be careful about what you're putting in the menu and take a lot of time to get that right. Here's one that I argue with web designers all the time about it, is a slideshow, or some people call it a carousel. And what that is it just scrolls through different images that usually can be clickable, that can have words too. And that, I think, is really important, because as you build out a fantastic website, all those layers within your menu or individual pages, those things get hidden, right? So your slideshow is their first experience. They come there. If you have it scroll through at a pretty fast pace, they'll actually maybe watch every single one of them, right? And if they're clickable, you can test and learn. You can see what things are clicked on the most. Obviously, the ones that are up front, that they're front loaded, they have a higher chance of being successful on the clicks. But you never know. Like, you could have something at the very end that gets a lot of clicks, and you realize that it's important to the people that are visiting your website. So with those, the struggle is size and quality of images, the dimensions, and what it looks like on, let's just say, a laptop or a monitor versus what it would look like on a handheld device and a smartphone. I do see some people freak out, like, that's going to look awful on a gigantic TV. I would say a small percentage of people are going to be on your website looking at it on an 85-inch screen, right? So I would probably, don't trust a consultant, but I would probably lean towards the smartphone experience, depending on your clients and prospects and how they kind of come to you and what their journey is. But lean a little bit to like it working well on at least a handheld device. So as you start to think about your brand and that slideshow, what gets those messages across? So in the menu, I said maybe you want to have your services listed in the menu. Well, maybe the slideshow then allows you to either reinforce that or to go in a different direction and show all your different target markets, and you kind of show your pictures that would resonate with somebody that would want to click on something. So up top, let's just say you list all your services of what you provide, but down low, I'm a corporate executive and I go in and I click on, oh man, that thing that was just scrolling through is just for me. One of the other things that you want to put in there is, if you're a professional like me, I like to show visuals of who I am. Oftentimes, I'll see that the bio is in the top 3 things that are clicked on. If that is the case, so that's the case, prove it with your own Google Analytics or whatever types of tool you're using to get your website information. But if that's the case and they're trying to go see that, I always say humans want to work with humans, right? They're going into your website and they're finding that out and they're looking at that information. Why make them drill down into pages to go find that stuff? Bring it up to the surface, and that's where that slider or the carousel is going to help you show that information. So if people are a differentiator for your organization, or they are, it's just part of your brand, be careful that you don't just show, I'll see a lot of times like very simplistic things like pillars, kind of showing you've been around for a long time or you're sturdy, or gears, like we work as a team, and like stereotypical kind of stuff that is generic branding 101. That stuff can get a message across. It's not the worst thing in the world, but if people are how you differentiate yourself, show that and have that go through in the sliding. One of the things I talked about earlier in another recording was cause-related marketing. And I might have talked about this example before, but one time I did a test with someone that was doing a new website. I was leading the project, and I pushed for them to show that philanthropic side. And so we had some testing that was done. We could click on all these different things, and I always say they went kicking and screaming. They disagreed with my advice, but they kind of let me push hard enough not to make them upset, but to say, hey, I think this is going to work. And so the very last thing, I think in the slideshow, there were 10 different images that went through, was one where they actually had done a volunteer day. And I believe it was the Ronald McDonald House. They were all wearing T-shirts, doing a wonderful volunteer day, right? And so They put that on there. All these things were clickable. Which brought them to a page that had more information on whatever that image was related to, and that they found that one thing was clicked on more than all the other things. And that was what their audience cared about, whether it was their clients, prospects, strategic alliances, whoever it might be. And so the real cool thing is you go in maybe with an idea of what you want to get across, but that learning is really valuable. These things shouldn't be permanent either. Like, you should update them, especially if it's pictures of your own people, because your brand connection is people, right? So they're going to constantly want to see kind of new updates, and you should invest in a photographer. There's times where you can upload your own picture, but this is probably that for the first-time visitor. This is something that's going to be that first impression. So if you have some low-grade pictures, that's not going to do it for them. One other thing too is video is really powerful, and you might want to just show that this is. If you click on this, this is going to bring you to a video, but then they go to a page. The video is there. They can click again and get the video, but you might have text next to the video, or you might have some other things we'll talk about in a second. But that will allow you to then show the video and give it real estate on the homepage to get people to want to go click on it and watch it. There are a ton of learnings I can talk to you about in this type of a carousel or slideshow. It is really important to know your brand. What are you trying to get across? What is that thing that's a gem on your website, the diamond in the rough, but you want to bring it up to the surface? So the slideshow is going to have you do that. Really big companies have a huge problem because they maybe have multiple departments within the organization, and they all want space on the homepage, right? Because the homepage is where a lot of people flow through. They don't have to flow through your homepage, but we'll just say that's usually the most highly traveled page of all your pages. So make sure that you spend a lot of time in figuring out a strategy there, and don't be afraid to test and learn. You can actually test the speed too. Is it a second? Is it 3 seconds? How many words do you have? One thing you have to be cautious about too before we get off the sliders is, are the words embedded in the image? So like, if you saw a picture of me doing a volunteer day, would that picture be in the image, or would it be responsive design text that floats below the image? Where you can get in problems is, if you're looking on a phone and the picture shrinks down to be able to fit in the dimension of the phone, that text can really shrink down too. Where if the text isn't part of the image, it can really it can actually be responsive and go to the size that you want to be able to be read. So one of the things, if you are going to have words in those images where they're fixed, you have to really realize you can't have a lot of words, and they got to have a really good pop, so to speak. And we'll talk a little bit about knocked out text in a second. The beauty of online marketing is you can test and learn, and you might want to have some promoted content. Let's just say you have an event coming up, and that's something you put in your slideshow. You can actually test to see, how do they get to that registration page? There's all kinds of different things outside of your website, but just say you have it 3 ways in your website. Test and see what drove the most traffic, right? And so I'm a big believer the slider kind of has a great opportunity to win that contest, because it is going to be at the forefront. But what is the content that you want to promote the most? Some of those slider things should be core messages that always come across, like what do you do? But the other thing might be like, hey, we have something really coming up that's new and exciting. You might want to be a part of it. Let's just say it's an event. You want to sign up to get your seat while you still can. Maybe you got some really great press, and so that's that thing that you want to have pop up. Really, there's a strategy behind this, and really what are those main things from a marketing standpoint that you want to get across. So promoted content is something that you want to think about. Another one's a freemium. So this doesn't have to be in the slider, but I'll bring it up related to it. A freemium is marketing lingo for a giveaway. And so if you have people coming into your website, what's that one thing that you can do to capture them? A lead is wonderful, only if you capture at least their phone number or their email and their name probably, right? So if they come to your website and they're just clicking around and let's say they spend all day there, that's a great lead, but it's not a real lead until you capture their information. So the freemium is something that you want to think about. On your website, where should that go? A slider might be something you want to test. Maybe it is something that goes on the homepage and has real estate locked somewhere that is very obvious that people will see. Maybe it's same real estate, like big and prominent, but it only goes on a certain page related to that content. So before I get too deep, you have to give examples of what freemiums might be. You might get a free book if you trade your information. You might get access to an event. You might get a video series. You might get just a two-sided flyer, right? Like it doesn't have to be a book, physical book or ebook. It could just be an article, right? That not everybody can get on your website unless they go in and trade their information. So a really good freemium is something that is gonna be something where in a world where I don't want another email and I don't think any of you guys want another email, what could I do to say, hey, I'm gonna click on that, I'm gonna go in, give you my contact information because I really have to have it. We've done a whole bunch of testing with this stuff. Sometimes that 10 tips for that audience can be really powerful. I use widows as an example a lot. So 10 tips widows need to know if they've just lost their significant other, or 5 things they need to know if they're about to lose their spouse. Whatever the wording is, that is something that if I'm in that situation and I'm that target audience, I need to go in and get that, right? So I'm going to then become a real lead because I'm going to go and share my information. In the freemiums, I would be really careful, and same advice for contact page, is don't over ask for information. And don't require things that aren't super, super important. So let's say you have 20 fields that they have to fill out. That's a bad experience, right? I'm a big believer of just capture the information that you need. So name, phone number, and email. Maybe you don't even require any of those, but you probably need to require maybe at least an email or the phone number. But then do you really need their household income? Do you really need their street address? Like all those things start to become a hurdle for me as a visitor. Like I don't want to give all that information to strangers, right? So just put in the bare minimum that they need to do to get into your lead funnel, right? Like once they share their information, now it's somebody that you can call, email, reach out, put on a drip campaign, whatever it might be. I don't know if it was 10 or 15 years ago, but I remember all these marketing kind of thought leaders were coming up with words. So I created my own, and one was called mark netting. And what that was just having a net that you could go and capture these leads, right? Like, so these fish come into your cove. How do you capture them? Like, what's that way of, what's your net? Like, how do you get them in there? I would really spend a lot of time in knowing your target audience better than anyone else, and know what's that one thing that they're going to want to trade their contact information for and become a real lead. So how do you use that mark netting kind of philosophy? This is probably the number one thing that I see websites are bad at. And if they really want to have their website be functional in the sales process and obviously marketing process, you're going to want to have some kind of way of getting people into the lead funnel. And then how does it move along? That's a whole nother topic that we'll maybe cover another day. But what are you doing to tease them to get in there? And spend a lot of time on this. This is something you could interview people that are prospects, interview clients, obviously, and figure out what do they really have to have. And what do you give them, too, is something they're going to really digest, right? Because I've traded my email for this. I've given kind of away all my ability to now be dripped on a lot. And there's a risk, whatever website I'm on, to do that. And so if I am going to take that leap of faith, make sure that content that comes to them, and make sure it's automated too, so it happens the instant that they share their information. What happens? What do they get? Is there cadence marketing to it? Is it something that they get one blast and they never get anything ever again? Is it timed where they get content A, content B comes day 2 and content B comes day 3? Are they always then captured into your email marketing? You know, have to be careful about what you can do with canned spam and all that stuff. But reality is, you want to make sure that you're actually getting this prospect further along into the lead funnel. So the freemium is just maybe, you know, your website's the first step. The freemium action that they take is the second step, and that marketing part is really, really important. And again, evaluate your own website, because when I do this work with clients and prospective clients, it's usually one of the biggest areas that companies can improve. This has been another episode of Business Bests. I'm Mike Byrnes. I hope this online marketing information has been helpful. I'll continue it in the next episode, but I look forward to hearing from you. You can always feel free to email me at mike@byrnesconsulting.com. My email is BYRNES, so mike@byrnesconsulting.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for tuning in.